6:30, I will call this meeting of the Guilford Budget Committee to order. I would ask that all cell phones and electronic devices be put on vibrate or shut off, and if you need to take a call, please use the lobby of the town hall. At this time, if we could all rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Joe Warnick will not be here tonight. I do not know where Chris is, and Selectman Grenier will be back in a minute. And in your packet tonight, you received a page from the Finance Appraisal and Technology that should be in your budget. It was accidentally omitted. Finance. They had it page 1 of 3, page 3 of 3, but no page 2 of 3. It's no, it's up front. It's the pink one after elections and reg. And if at this time, if you could peruse the minutes of the meeting, of the last meeting. Yeah, no. So you all set? Okay, I noticed one typo on there. On the administration subcommittee report, Angela.
Yes.
5th line down, and it starts, the line says Skip Murphy did not, that he was not, I probably should say did note that he was not in favor.
Oh.
I have one more on page 2 at the top, under debt service. Instead of if of on the top line.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Page 2, debt service, the
Yes.
top line all the way to the right, instead of if a radio, of a radio.
Oh. Makes better sense.
Just the vowel.
Right.
It's the teacher. Kristen, did you have anything?
No, you covered the one I
Go.
was.
Any other corrections? I will entertain a motion then. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the meeting notes from October 18th, 2018.
Second. Okay, and seconded? No further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And any abstentions? One abstention. And any public comment? Hearing none, public comment is closed. Now time for the Fire Rescue Subcommittee report. First, I'll let you get organized, or you all set?
I'm good to go.
Okay. On the 17th of October, 2018, myself, Jack Kelly, and Kristen Snow had the privilege of meeting with Chief Carrier, Board of Fire Engineer, Chairman Bill Egley, and Deputy Chief Brad Ober up at the fire station. And the first budget we talked about was the fire rescue budget. Jack Kelly asked about the overtime account, and Chief Carey explained what went into this account. From our previous talk the night before from DPW, we had asked questions about the vehicle maintenance account and what this expense goes for. Chief Carey explained that this account goes for the parts for vehicle maintenance and not the labor that goes into the vehicle maintenance. The subcommittee recommends the budget as proposed by the Board of Selectmen at $2,051,179, which is down $7,362 or 0.36%. Are there any questions for the chief? Yeah, the special one, but that's all the way at the end.
Any warrant article specifically focused on the, any warrant article specifically focused on the fire department that we need to kind of.
Now, that'll probably be the last thing I'll talk about.
And
Yeah. But we won't vote on it till the end. Okay, I will make a motion then, seeing that there's no questions, that we accept the Board of Selectmen's recommendation of $2,051,179. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Kristen. Any discussions? I'm just gonna wait 1 second till the selectman comes in. You made a motion to accept that, so just waiting for you. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay? The ayes have it. Next one was the forestry. Even though it will be a special warrant article, Jack Kelly asked about the forestry vehicle. Chief Carrier talked about the vehicle's purpose, how many calls it responds to, and what the proposed new vehicle will be. The subcommittee recommends the budget as proposed by the Board of Selectmen at $2,693, which is level funded. Any questions? Here, right?
Chief, is that the old 5-quarter-ton military vehicle, the one we've had since the 70s?
We still have that vehicle, it's 1966 Kaiser Jeep, I believe. That is owned by the state, so if we were going to get rid of that, we'd turn it into the state. This vehicle being replaced is a old DPW vehicle.
Right, I remember
That we put a body on.
Any other questions? Skip?
Yeah. Chief, what are you replacing it with?
A brand new, I guess it would be a 2019 Ford F-550. We change out the rear axle to be a single wheel rear axle. We put a flatbed on it, order it without a regular pickup body. Put a flatbed on it, and then we build compartments on the side. We looked into a Reading utility body like is on the present forestry, and for about the same money, we can build something that's more custom to what we need compartment-wise. So that's why we're going with that.
Anybody else? And I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we accept the budget as proposed by the Board of Selectmen for $2,693.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Tracy. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Emergency management. There were no questions that were asked, and the subcommittee recommends the budget as proposed by the Board of Selectmen at $3,170, which is level funded. Any questions?
Which budget is that again?
It's the,
Yellow tab,
Management.
emergency
right after
management.
forestry,
Back this way.
the next one after that.
Fire rescue.
Yep.
Emergency management, got it. Stipends.
Chris, any question?
No.
Hearing none. I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion to accept the emergency management budget of $3,170.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Fire protection. Chief Carey explained the payments to both the Laconia Waterworks and also to the Lakes Region Mutual Fire Aid. Jack Kelly asked how 911 works, and Chief Carey explained. The subcommittee recommends the budget as proposed by the Board of Selectmen at $130,465, which is an increase of $777 or 0.60%. Any questions? Skip.
What's driving the increase in the cost? You know, back in 2015, it was just 79,000, and now seems to be getting higher at a more rapid rate.
The cost is being driven higher, basically as a function of the budget for Lakes Region Mutual Fire Aid. But there is a formula that is used to apply to each community for the amount that we're responsible for paying. And that formula is based on 10% flat fee, 40% assessed valuation, and 50% population. So certainly as our assessed valuation goes up, we'll see an increase in what we pay. The the assessment from Lakes Region, last year's cost was $85,432, and this year's is 86, and so 1.58% increase. Tell you. So Guilford as a town pays about 8.67% of Lakes Region's operating costs.
Yeah, and you said that their costs are going up. What's the reason for that?
Personnel costs, insurance costs, infrastructure costs. They're trying to start to put away some money for capital improvements, for the radio system. So they have 2 dispatchers on 24 hours a day. And that would be the personnel side that's driving that. But the infrastructure side, I mean, the they're dealing with radio problems right now, trying to fix, a transmitter up on Belknap, so
Okay.
it gets expensive.
Okay, are those two dispatchers servicing the entire, area of operation? Are we tied into them, or I thought that we would be, if something was going on here, we would just call direct?
Call direct. They receive 911 calls at the
Okay.
dispatch center, and they dispatch us, and then we talk to them
Okay,
during the incident. I don't know how to.
all right.
This
Sure.
kinda gets to the question I had asked you, maybe you could share it for everybody, how the regional 911 works.
Oh, okay.
So 911 doesn't go right to,
Sure. So 911 is a state agency, the Bureau of Emergency Communications. They have two public answering points, one in Concord and one in Laconia. They're using Laconia more frequently, but it's separate from Lakes Region Mutual Fire Aid. So when you dial 911, they'll pick up the phone in Laconia at the PSAP, which is the 911 side, and answer, this is, I can't remember what they say.
911, what's your
Yeah,
emergency?
911, what's your emergency, police, fire, or ambulance? So if you say, I need an ambulance, they'll say, okay, what town are you from? Verify your address, if you're calling from a landline, or if not, they'll ask you your address from a cell phone. And then they'll say, okay, stay on the line, I'm gonna transfer your call. They transfer you to a Lakes Region Mutual Fire Aid dispatcher, and that's the radio side. So that's where we get dispatched. That's where we talk to them from the field. 911 will keep, especially in a medical emergency, they'll keep you on the phone, they'll give you medical instructions, how to help the person that you're calling for, or help yourself if you're calling for yourself. During a fire incident, they'll probably just transfer you right over, make sure the information's being relayed, and leave it at that. And same thing for a police emergency. But there are a lot of advantages, especially during medical emergencies, for people to call 911. And that's called, what we call emergency medical dispatching. And they've made a big difference out in the field because they're giving instructions on the medical side. I don't know if that answers the question.
Okay.
Two separate agencies, though.
I kinda got my answer a little bit. So there's three levels. There's 911, Lakes Region,
Mutual Fire.
Mutual Fire Aid, and then the actual responder, which
Right.
that's what you guys wanna focus on. So that alleviates somebody having to call in direct. Do people call in direct?
They do, actually.
They do.
We get a fair number of calls directly to the fire station, and sometimes they're the less emergent type of calls. Somebody might have a concern that, should I call the fire department or not, to have that question in their mind. Other times, people just, that's the first number that comes to mind because they've called it before for business reasons. But in that case, we would get on the radio, we'd call Lakes Region, say, could you tone Guilford to whatever the incident may be? And they still handle our dispatching duties, even if the call comes directly to the station. We don't have anybody in the station that is trained as a dispatcher or sits in front of a radio. That just doesn't exist. So that's what we're paying for Lakes Region to do for us.
Okay, so in a sense, it kind of eliminates all the different towns, the 10 towns or whatever, to have a dispatcher of their own, they have a central
Right.
piece, and then they dispatch out from there, whatever's needed.
Right.
So
It's
the
truly
way
an
I
example
initially
of-
think of it is that it's another layer between 911 and the person who's actually going out to the site, but what you're telling me is that there's efficiencies.
Somebody would have to do it, and it's truly a form of regionalization, where 35 communities are being dispatched in one location. We're just paying a piece of that pie.
8.6%.
Right, and that's based on valuation and population for the most part.
So the total budget, that we're, oh no, that's, okay, the total piece is 86,000.
That's our total piece.
That's that portion, right.
Their total budget is 1.29 million.
How many full-time equivalents do they have, chief?
I believe they have 8, or 10, excuse me. They also have a chief and a deputy coordinator.
Where do they do that work out of?
off of Right Way Path, the old state prison property.
Okay.
Anything else?
We could probably arrange a tour if anybody wants to get up there sometime. It's pretty interesting.
It's interesting.
They even get a tour on both sides to get to the 911 as well, yeah.
Anything else? I will entertain a motion then. No, go ahead.
Um, The hydrants, I think we talked about that last year, that was, we paid that to Laconia to supply water.
Right.
Is that what it is?
So on the ends of our community, being the Guilford Ave end down Hounslow Ave up to Wesley Woods, and the commercial area up to about Walmart, we have Laconia water that runs into Guilford. And there are pressurized hydrants on that water system, and we pay for the use of those hydrants, which includes the pipe that goes to the hydrants. The water that we use is not metered. There's no limit on what we can use or not use. And they're very easy to work with, you know, if we have training. We were over on Blaisdell Ave today testing hose, and no complaints at all from Laconia Waterworks.
So that's basically a maintenance fund for Laconia maintains those for us on our property.
Right. Right, we have no other requirements as far as maintaining those hydrants other than shoveling, which some years is worse than others.
Chief, if one of those water pipes leading to a hydrant were to burst, do we get a bill for that, or is it included in what we?
We do not, we never have, and I don't believe that there's any type of requirement that says that.
Tim, you all set? Anything else? I'll entertain a motion then.
Make a motion that we approve the fire protection budget of $130,465 approved by the Board of Selectmen.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Tom. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And the last one, the green tab after solid waste, the health officer, or health administration. Chief Carey explained that the biggest increase was the retirement account because the last health officer was in a different retirement tier than Deputy Chief Brad Ober. The subcommittee recommends the budget as proposed by the Board of Selectmen at $3,675, which is an increase of $473 or 14.75%. Any questions? Skip.
Can someone remind me who was the health officer before?
It was Peter Norris, correct? The former DPW director.
Right, who was not part of the fire department.
No.
And most of this is driven because the person who is now taking over that role is in the fire department.
Correct, Deputy Chief Ober.
Okay.
Group one versus group two.
Right.
Yeah.
Chris?
Can someone explain to me exactly how that math works? So 792 is 33% of 2,400, so those are, is it based off of the 2,400?
Yes, it is based off the 2,400.
And we have the current rate, right, of 30.09. I guess my question is that should be an exact number if we have the rate, correct?
Yep.
Does the published rates run the same calendar year as our budget year?
No, it's split in half, so there's a January to June rate and a July to December rate.
Even using the higher rate.
comes out to be 33%. I mean, that's a huge chunk for the retirement, you know, just for $2,400.
Yeah, it's about 30%. That's the fire retirement rate, as opposed to the 11% rate of a Group 2 employee.
Is it 30 or 33%?
33%. It's in the 30s.
Okay, it comes out to be about 33%. I mean,
So if you want.
it's still not a, overall in the big scheme of things, it's not a big amount of money. It's just, you look at that number and you go,
So the first
wow.
half of the year, it's 31.89%, and then the second half of the year, it drops to 30.09%. And those are set by the state.
I'm just curious why it's budgeted then at 33%. It doesn't sound like it's an exact number.
It's an exact number, it's tied to the, half of it's tied to 31.89, and half of it's tied to 30.09 on the $2,400 number.
Well, then you must be smarter than my calculator, because my calculator's done it 3 times now, and it comes out to 33%.
Yeah.
3% would be 800 of 2,400. Right?
Well, it's 33 point, it doesn't go out that far, but it's. That would be 33.33%.
That's true.
Scott, from January to June, what was the number again?
31.89. So there's an additional 2% tacked onto that, because the deputy chief is a salaried employee, and salaried employees receive 2% contribution from the town, to their retirement funds, in lieu of accumulating comp time.
What was it from July to December,
30.09. And you guys have all that information in your budget book.
And then you add the 2%.
Then you add the 2%.
That's all I need to say.
Anything else? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the health officer's line item as proposed by the Board of Selectmen at $3,675.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And then lastly, to answer your question, the capital items this year will be to finish off the fire pond on Alva Wilson Road, radios, or I should say portable radios for the department, the 4th Street vehicle, and the fire station renovations. And those will all be warrant articles, correct, Scott? So we'll discuss those later. But if you have questions, Skip.
The new radios, chief, is that going back to the new emergency system that was such a brouhaha a year or 2 ago? Was it one something or other? I'm struggling to remember the name, but I do remember that the new emergency system that was being brought up for first responders.
FirstNet.
Yeah, FirstNet, okay.
No, it really doesn't have anything to do with that. It's just replacing outdated technology. There are portable radios that we assign to our personnel. They will be digital capable. That's going to be one of the biggest upgrades. Another question that had come up in the CIP committee was, is this part of the police department's radio upgrades? And it's not. It's completely separate. It just portable radios for our own purposes.
Okay, they also tend to wear personal radios as well, correct?
Right.
So do we get any kind of economy of scale if you folks just do one buy with both departments?
We get state bid pricing anyway, so I don't really believe that we would have any better pricing on quantity, but we could certainly ask that question.
How about compatibility?
They would be completely interoperable radios, so we would be able to speak to the police. We do now, we can now.
Okay. And how old is the current system?
We have two different types of portables.
Something.
I have that here. The oldest portables that are going to be removed from service are 20 years old, and I believe that the next level is about 12 years old.
Okay.
Right.
This is only for my own benefit. What happens to the old radios?
We'll try to reuse as many or repurpose as many as we can that are still serviceable. The problem is, as you probably well know, is when some of these radios break, they aren't being serviced anymore, so they have to be put out of service. So we'll put those. We have rack chargers in our gear room. The call firefighters can grab them when they come in, but they'll be used as long as they can before we
There's no
scrap them.
trade-in value?
No. I mean, 20-year-old portables.
I understand, Chief, but I gotta tell you, and I'm being selfish here, I'm a negotiator on the SWAT team, and our radios are failing at a very high rate. They're very old, they won't be serviced. It's one of the things about grants. We got a grant, yep, and they gave us, technology was on its way out. And we've been to SWAT calls where guys can't even talk to each other. That's unconscionable. And we're talking big money to replace them all, because they have to work under the helmets. You've got any that are interoperable that work? I'd be interested in taking them off your hands.
I don't believe that the 1250s would be.
They're not
And you
digital.
need something digital capable, right?
No.
You don't? All right.
Well, then we might.
Yeah, we'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, the only thing we have to get a headset, and those are 600 a throw.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, unconscionable.
Mm.
What are you gonna do?
What are the building improvements for the 80,250?
That is to repair the apparatus floor. There's two pieces to our apparatus floor. The oldest piece was built in, or rebuilt in 1974, when the floor started to fail. And that floor was saved when we built or renovated the station. Basically, the old station was torn down with the exception of the basement, the 3 bays on the apparatus floor, and a portion of the back wall. So in those 3 bays, there's work to be done. The floor is uneven, it's cracked in spots, some of the concrete is spalled off. There's metal grate floor drains that are long, that go down the middle of where the vehicles park. Some of those grates are missing, they've been broken over the years. The trays that actually sit in the drains are rusted out and apart, so those need to be rebuilt. And really the biggest part of the expense of the whole project would be epoxy coating the whole floor. And that would not be just those 3 bays, but it would be all of the bays on the upstairs of the fire station. And that would preserve whatever work is done and probably never have to touch it again. And it's huge money, there's no doubt about it.
So I have a question, just out of curiosity. So these expenses of, line item 826, which is 46K for the radios, and then 866, line items 80K for floor repairs. Why don't those get loaded into the budget so that the public has better transparency of the fully loaded cost for the department over time? It would just seem that 85,000 or 80,250 in floor repairs would be come into some building maintenance under the budget 531 line item, and then the radios would go under, maybe 461 general equipment. Those are pretty chunky numbers. It just seems that we're presenting the fire budget as being down 0.36%, but you left out 46,000 radios and 80,250. Is there any reason that happens?
I would suggest to you that they would even come under more scrutiny because they will be standalone warrant articles for each of those items. So you'll have the fire budget, which will be voted on as one piece, and then you'll have a warrant article for the portable radios, a warrant article for the forestry truck, a warrant article for the apparatus floor. I think I follow your thought process. It doesn't give you an overall picture of the fire department expenses.
Especially over
However-
time, right? So if you're looking at how expenses are compounding over time, if they're embedded in these warrant articles, kind of lose that analysis. So,
But some of it though, it's capital reserve funds, with the capital improvement program, so the money is not coming directly out of their line items, it's coming out of the capital reserve funds. And that's what the voters are voting on generally.
mhm.
They could say no.
Capital reserve. Scott, did you have anything to say?
No, but we'll be presenting to the budget committee a complete, wording of all the special warrant articles. And I think like the chief said, it's more transparent this way, and people can actually, vote up or down on these specific items as opposed to burying it in the fire department budget, and then folks have no say really at all whether to spend that money or not. But anything over 50,000 we treat as a capital item, we take it out of operating budgets, and it's the citizen gets to vote on it.
Not to mention, a regular, say, the fire department budget as an example, you don't have these costs every year.
Yeah.
And then suddenly in 1 year, you add 150,000 for capital improvements, people go, what the heck happened, it's up 25%. If they voted down, you get no budget.
A few years back, we did start showing the actual payments that we would make, such as lease payments, in our budget. Before, that used to be in a separate section of the budget. All the capital payments were in one lump sum section, whereas now each department pays or shows in their operating budget the capital expenses that they actually pay out.
What fund is you're gonna try and take that money out of? Is it the fire equipment, or what?
It's actually coming out of fund balance.
Fund balance, okay.
So is 50,000 the general guideline, anything above that would go into this?
Correct.
Scott? How much is in the balance at this point, and how much are we spending in total out of it for this budget?
There is currently $4,194,000 in the fund balance. This budget, right now there's about $1,028,000 coming out of fund balance. We're gonna be coming back to you soon with some revised numbers on that.
With 4 million and you wanna use 1 million.
Correct.
Sean, just wanna throw this out there, that I don't know if you came to some of the school board, meetings, and the school board, just to prepare you all, is taking that new approach going forward. That's been a change in our philosophy, and instead of dealing with the spikes of capital improvements within the budget, we're pushing them more towards warrant articles now too, and you'll see that when we come before you later in the month, later in November, excuse me.
Anything else? Sue?
Are we gonna we'll have an opportunity to talk about every one of these warrant articles, no doubt.
Correct.
Okay.
You'll have to vote to recommend.
You'll have
or
to
not
vote to recommend
each
it,
one.
so.
And that's toward the end of this process, right?
Correct. Be sometime in January.
And you will have the warrant article language right in front of you when you take those votes.
Yep.
But we won't have an opportunity to discuss them on an individual basis here?
We should.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to vote.
You have to vote, so we'll have a
Okay.
discussion.
It's gonna be a long night.
Yeah.
Now, Scott, while you are here, when will we be getting revised numbers for like the health insurance and all that?
You're gonna have a revised budget coming
Probably in November.
Okay, now we'll also include the Buildings and Grounds Department?
Yes.
Okay.
When would you like a revised budget? Let me ask you that.
Now, if we could have it before the 8th, because that's when DPW comes.
Yeah. That'd be helpful.
Will do.
Chris?
So every budget that we have approved so far, we're gonna have to go back and reapprove because the numbers are gonna be different?
Yes.
Yes.
And basically, the only real changes are the insurance.
No.
Everything.
There's a lot of changes.
And especially in Buildings and Grounds.
That's the problem with starting the first week in October. You know, come the middle of October, we gotta review the budget. We do it every year. Last year we didn't because we started in November.
Then we get into it at the end of the year.
That's the issue with the timing of it, so.
I wish you know that last year. But when you tried it the other way, you got really crammed.
Correct.
We got wicked, I mean,
Right,
we had
right.
like a, what,
So this,
5-6 hour meeting
for
one night?
those of you, this is still an improvement, you feel?
My first
I'm
year, we
asking.
did it this way, and then we went to the other way, and this is when we're back to doing it early.
I mean, this is the way it's always been. I mean, Sue and I,
September?
we started like end of September, beginning of October.
I think
don't-
this is easier.
Yeah, it's a lot easier.
But speaking of something that isn't, or maybe I'm just really out of date again, looking at the CIP on fiscal year 2019 requested for the outside agencies, we're already seeing, have we already received requests for money at this point? Because I'm looking at 21,000 for Lakes Region Mental Health, and then 216 for Red Cross. They came in early.
So we've received letters, but, in the end, we're gonna get petition warrant articles for all of those things, or they won't go in front of the voters.
Okay, so just these numbers are from the letters.
These numbers are from letters. And some you may have, in your books already, and those that you don't, you'll be getting when you get your next packet from me. So if it shows as a request, it's because we got a letter somewhere asking for that number. I think the Red Cross number's in your books. I think the other one, just came in recently, and that's coming to you in the next packet of information. With the Buildings and Grounds budget and other changes.
Anything else for the fire department? Hearing none, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, okay, I looked at the calendar, as Skip had mentioned about having a fiscal committee meeting, and realized that when I was looking at it, it's gonna be coming close to crunch time for the school committee assignments also. So tonight, I will ask that we get the school committee assignments, the person who will be talking to the department heads tonight. So for technology, for the school committee assignments, it was Kristen Snow, Joe Warnick, Tom Chase, Peter Karagianis, and Sue Green. Who would like to be?
Is that McGee that we could?
That's Brenda McGee.
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. Middle school, will be Tim Sullivan, Kristen Snow, myself, and Selectman Grenier. I'll talk to Peter. Food service, the Kristen Snow, Tracy Corbett, Skip, and Selectman Grenier. Skip. Buildings and grounds, Tim Sullivan, Tom Chase, myself, Sue Green, and Joe Warnick.
Joe Warnick.
Joe's not here, he's doing it.
He's nominated.
I will teach him the missing link.
Special education and federal projects. Tim Sullivan, Kristen Snow, myself, Sue, and Peter. Now,
I'll do the special ed.
you'll do special ed, get in touch with Esther? High school.
What is the date on that, do you know?
Yeah, it's
Looking at that,
it's November 29th.
November 29th.
And we meet with the superintendent on the 27th, so it's gonna be a hurry up meeting. High school will be Tim Sullivan, Joe Warnick, Peter, and Jack Kelly. Who would like to set up a meeting with Mr. Sparazzo? Tim. Elementary school was Kristen, Joe, Tracy, and myself. Who would like to talk to Danielle?
I'd be happy to talk to Danielle.
Okay. And then district-wide default and revenues was Tim Sullivan, Skip Murphy, Tom Chase, and Jack Kelly. And that you would have to get in touch with Mr. Bigley, correct? Chris?
It was default budget and what else?
Revenues. So I mean, it's gonna be
Scott.
Scott and Kirk. But would you talk to Kirk?
Either one, it doesn't matter.
Who would like to talk to the big boys?
I'll do it.
Okay,
I don't know who the,
just
Kirk
Kirk.
Beitler.
oh, okay.
Yeah, just talk to Kirk or Scott Isabel. And just a reminder, if you talk to these people, Angela, it goes to Kim, correct? Or does it go to you then to Kim?
Well, generally Kim organizes it, but I somehow have received notification of the meeting, so I can post it appropriately, post it on the
So if we
website.
could talk to Kim over at the SAU about when the meetings are, where they are, and then go to,
When do these meetings have to be done by? They have to be done by,
the first meeting for for the subcommittees will be November 29th, which is technology, special ed, and the federal projects.
so we got some time on these.
Correct, but, I mean, because we're meeting with the superintendent the Tuesday after Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Kind of a,
Sean, we haven't done these before, so is it, it's those of us who've had our names there and typically just one, just the principal or just, or is there more people? I just don't
it
know.
says okay, like, for the elementary school, you will talk to Danielle.
Yeah.
But it's usually who's ever on the budget committee, Danielle, and who's the assistant principal, Chris?
Sean.
Sean Walsh.
Walsh will be there, and that's it.
Okay.
And maybe Scott or Kirk.
And it's held at the SAU or at the school?
Elementary school.
Okay. All right, so we would contact, say, the principal and then tell Kim and Angela.
Or
When something's
tell
done.
Kim and Angela will get with us.
I would contact Kim,
Kim.
yep, have her
And
be
then
your point
once
of
it's
contact
set
for the
up,
schools.
at least make sure you.
Yep, exactly.
Great,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, now, also, Skip, I thought about the question you asked last week. The only, in all honesty, the only good time that I can see would be January 8th, which is also the day for the town and school petition warrant articles. But if we, Chris, how long does Scott take on his reports? Half hour? 15 minutes to do the fiscal stuff, his financial report?
Depends how many questions you have for him.
Well, no, I mean, when he does it to the school board, it's what, 15 minutes?
He doesn't even report anymore, he sends it to our Google account, and we review it. His reports were getting too lengthy,
Okay.
so he just answers questions now. So in other words, he sends the current budget to us, we review it prior to the meeting, instead of him going, because the reports are like 30-something pages long.
Yep.
And to go line by line, in a regular school board meeting would take forever. So people review it, some are better than others. Adam Minnie from Gilmanton's very good about going through it, checking, asking questions. But the financial report is basically just that, question and answer.
The financial report or the budget?
The financial report.
financial report. We have a monthly,
Yeah,
year-to-date
Glenn
financial
does with you
report,
guys.
what's been expended so far compared to budget, et cetera.
I mean, Skip, would that work if he sent us everything? And then we had a quick meeting before we do the warrant articles? I mean, I'm just worried that, you know, we are getting closer to the holiday season. And also trying to, I mean, the first time we did this, it was like a 3-hour meeting. And to try to do that with all the other budgets that we're dealing with, I would just rather kinda hold off on, Chris.
What if we just tack it on to one of these, I mean, these meetings are going way faster than last year, like next week we have police, and after having just done the police subcommittee, we're not gonna be here for more than an hour. Why don't you just do the town one after that, and then pick one of these school ones when Scott's gonna be here anyway, and do the school.
Okay, could do that, is that okay with you, Skip?
I see nothing wrong with splitting it up between 2 different nights. As long as it gets done in a reasonable length of time, not the time to do it, but the interval between,
Yep.
when we blasted it and then. And that's kinda what we're supposed to do, so. And when do the books close for the school?
August 31st,
Okay.
or
No,
June
June
31st.
31st, so you're gonna be sort of in the middle at this point.
yeah, we're like 4 months in right now.
Yeah, okay.
August, September, October.
Yeah, the town is, what, December 31st, correct?
Okay.
Calendar year and their fiscal year.
I'm horrible at dates.
Should we say we're gonna do that on the 1st, which is next?
Next Thursday, first.
I mean,
Do the town first and then the school?
Yeah, because,
I agree with
Scott
Rick.
will be here.
We're advancing this at a speed, we could
Scott will be
combine
here.
stuff and really open up some time.
yeah, well, I mean, Glenn just gave his report last night, right? Right? Yep. So, yeah, I'd have no problem doing the town next week, if that's okay.
Well, if we can get the materials ahead of time to really review them, and then just come back with just questions rather than just going line by line.
Yeah. Andrew, Andrew, when does that get posted to the website?
I will post that, it will be posted tomorrow. He gave the update to the Board of Selectmen last night, so I'll post it to the website tomorrow, so it will be on there, under fiscal financial reports. I can email it as well too, directly to the budget committee.
Oh, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yep.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And then, by the way, they're always out there. Every month when they're reported, they're posted to the website within a day or two after the meeting as well.
I'm gonna save Skip an email. Can you put that in Excel form, please?
Thank you.
I can't, but you can ask the finance director.
I'm glad to see I'm getting a little help here.
Anything else?
So I just have one other, how much ahead, or when should we schedule the subcommittee meetings, like we've been doing now, at least a week ahead?
Yeah, that's, I mean, yeah,
Are the
that's fine.
numbers ready enough to start scheduling them now? I'm sorry to be such a nitch.
No, I
No,
would,
you
I
should
would
ask.
start in
You
November.
should ask.
I mean, I would start like November 1st.
We just finalized our budgets,
Oh.
on Tuesday night.
Okay, so it would be okay to just, to figure something out?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Oh, that is.
We haven't got our books, but-
Yeah,
No, we don't get
rather-
books till the
Do
week
it,
of
have that much more
Thanksgiving.
time, Get
Okay.
them done, get them
I
out.
just didn't know if the
Well-
if the numbers are ready, we could do it anytime.
But we haven't got,
We don't have our books.
We
The
don't have the
books.
books yet,
Okay,
but
so
We get a
that's,
can
separate school
schedule it.
book like this.
there is,
that's what I'm,
Let me turn my
that's,
cell
those
phone
are the
off first.
details that I'm trying to understand.
Let me clarify, there's a public forum on
Thank
our
you.
budget on Monday, the 5th of November, at 7 PM, following our school board meeting, school board meeting, for public input on our budget.
and that's at the auditorium in the high school, correct?
Sure,
I think that's what Kurt sent me.
I go where I'm told,
Now, hold it, let me just,
yeah.
I gotta wait for the cell phone to warm up.
Chris, question, if the books aren't going to be ready for a while, if your budget is already finalized, can we get the Excel spreadsheet? In lieu of having the books to be able to look at, stuff?
I never see it in Excel spreadsheet. spreadsheet format. Have you seen it in Excel spreadsheet format? Actually,
would-
you know what it is,
I think-
it can
I think-
be put in, but
yes.
without formulas, I think is what he said,
Yes, because that's the problem we had last year.
Let's,
I mean, if we're gonna do
can
the
you
over.
reach out and get an official answer from them? I don't wanna put words in their mouth.
Well, no, this is what Kirk sent me yesterday. And I will not read the whole thing. But I said, there are 2 other budget-related events the school board has scheduled at this time. November 5th at 7 p.m. in the high school lecture hall, the auditorium, there is a public presentation of the school board's budget. And the second is a meeting on November 14th at 5:30 p.m. at the SAU office to review the default budget. Once these meetings are posted, we will send you a posting. So, November 5th will be the.
I mean, I'll talk to Kirk. I don't see any reason why the individual department budgets can't start being reviewed by subcommittees sooner than that. There's really
Yeah, no, either do I.
I mean, if there is public comment that persuades the school board to make further changes to the budget, then we can always update the budget committee subcommittees.
Correct.
And the default budget meeting is really irrelevant as long as we're not covering the default budget in the subcommittee yet. I mean, it's the standalone thing.
Yep. So Angela, if you could let Glenn know about the financial stuff for next week.
So you want Glenn to be present to do a financial update year-to-date on the next
Well, in
meeting,
case we have questions.
November
We won't be
1st.
able to do default budget until after.
Glenn
we
is out of
meet
the
on and go
office
through it line by
until
line.
Tuesday.
That's fine.
That's the 5th.
What was the date of that?
November 5th.
The default budget one?
Oh, 14th.
14th.
So it has to be after that,
Yeah.
November 14th, okay.
I will let Glenn and Scott know.
Thank you. And that will be a Wednesday night. Anything else to come before this budget committee tonight? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those
Croc TV.